The Last Stand. The emergency klaxons have been wailing for 3 days straight, their harsh mechanical screaming now just background noise to the 200 souls trapped aboard Proxima station. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the command center, her weathered hands gripping the tactical display as red warning lights painted her angular face in crimson shadows. Outside the reinforced viewports, the void of space crawled with enemy ships. The HFY had come without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like metallic locusts. Their vessels were organic nightmares, all curves and chitinous plating that gleamed wetly under the system's distant star. For 72 hours, they had pounded the mining station with plasma bursts and boarding pods, testing every defense, probing every weakness. Elena had served 20 years in the colonial marines before taking this posting. She knew when a situation was hopeless. This was beyond hopeless. "Status report," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos of the command deck. Lieutenant Sarah Blake, barely 25 and fresh from the academy, looked up from her console with hollow eyes. "Hull breaches on levels 7 through 12. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely. We've lost main communications, backup power is at 30%, and the defensive grid is down to 4 functional turrets." Chief Engineer Tom Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better decades. The old man's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent his life keeping impossible machinery running. "I've got teams welding steel plates over the worst breaches, but it's like trying to stop a flood with Band-Aids. Those bug bastards are using some kind of acid that eats through our hull plating like it's paper." Elena nodded grimly. She'd expected as much. The HFY were methodical hunters. They would continue their siege until the station's defenses crumbled completely, then move in for the kill. Standard doctrine would be to evacuate, but the enemy had jammed all communications and destroyed the station's few escape pods in the opening minutes of the attack. Dr. Marcus Chen burst through the command center doors, his lab coat singed and his usually pristine hair disheveled. The xenorchaeologist clutched a data pad to his chest like a lifeline, his eyes bright with the manic energy of someone who'd just made an impossible discovery. "Commander," he gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "I found something. Down in the deep excavation sites, below the mining operations. It's not human technology, and it's not HFY either. It's something else entirely." Elena turned from the display, one eyebrow raised. "Doctor, unless you found a way to call for help or blow these aliens back to their homeworld, I don't have time for archaeological discoveries." Chen shook his head violently. "No, you don't understand. This could be exactly what we need. The miners broke through into a chamber 3 days ago, just before the attack. There's a structure down there, some kind of beacon or communication device. It's ancient, probably older than human civilization, but it's still active." The command deck fell silent except for the distant rumble of weapons fire and the groaning of stressed metal. Elena studied the scientist's face, looking for any sign of madness or desperation that might make his claims unreliable. What she saw instead was the careful excitement of a man who'd spent his career studying the impossible. "Show me," she said. The journey to the deep levels took them through corridors that reeked of plasma scoring and fear sweat. Emergency lighting cast everything in stark red shadows, and more than once they had to detour around sections where the HFY boarding parties had carved through bulkheads with their bioweapons. Rodriguez had jury-rigged defensive positions at key choke points, turning mining lasers and cargo haulers into improvised weapons. Elena felt a surge of pride watching her people adapt and survive. Miners who'd never held anything more dangerous than a rock cutter were now laying ambushes with jury-rigged explosives. Station engineers had turned the asteroid processing facility into a fortress, using the massive ore crushers as cover while they fired mining charges at alien boarding parties. This was what made humans dangerous, Elena reflected. Not their technology, not their weapons, but their absolute refusal to lie down and die quietly. They'd reached the excavation site after 20 minutes of careful movement through damaged corridors. The deep mining operation had carved into the asteroid's core, following rare mineral veins that had made Proxima Station profitable despite its remote location. But now, the industrial machinery sat silent and abandoned. Chen led them through a series of rough-cut tunnels that descended into the asteroid's heart. The air grew colder as they went deeper, and Alina could feel the weight of rock above them like a physical presence. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern that definitely hadn't been carved by human tools. The chamber stretched away into darkness, its walls covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow in the beam of their flashlights. At the center stood a structure that defied easy description. It rose from the cavern floor like a twisted spire of crystalline metal, its surface covered in symbols that pulsed with soft blue light. "My God," Blake whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. "How long has this been here?" Chen approached the structure with the reverence of a man entering a cathedral. Based on the geological survey, this chamber predates the asteroid's capture by this system. We're looking at technology that's millions of years old, possibly from one of the first intelligent species in this galaxy. Alina circled the spire, studying its alien geometry. "And you think this is some kind of communication device?" "More than that," Chen said, pulling out a handheld scanner. "It's been monitoring local space traffic for millennia. I've managed to interface with some of its systems using quantum resonance patterns. It's cataloged every ship that's passed through this system, including detailed scans of their technology and biology." Rodriguez let out a low whistle. "Including human ships?" Chen nodded. "Including human ships. But here's the interesting part. It's also been sending periodic signals into deep space. I think it's part of a network, a galaxy-spanning communication system left behind by whatever civilization built it." The implications hit Alina like a physical blow. If Chen was right, if this device could send messages across interstellar distances, then maybe they weren't as alone as they thought. "Can you activate it?" she asked. "I think so. But there's a risk. If I'm wrong about its function, we could end up broadcasting our location to every hostile species in the galaxy. Or worse, we might wake up something that's been sleeping for millions of years." Alina looked around at her companions. Blake's young face was tight with fear but determined. Rodriguez just shrugged with the fatalistic calm of someone who'd been in tight spots before. Above them, the sounds of battle continued as her people fought and died against impossible odds. "Doctor," she said quietly, "we're already facing extinction. If this thing offers even a chance of survival, we have to take it." Chen nodded and approached the spire's base, where symbols glowed more brightly than elsewhere. He pulled out a collection of improvised interface devices, quantum computers cobbled together from mining equipment, and scientific instruments. For several tense minutes, he worked in silence while the others stood guard. The chamber began to change. The blue light grew brighter, and the geometric patterns on the walls started to pulse in rhythm with some vast, invisible heartbeat. The spire itself began to hum with barely audible harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "It's working," Chen breathed. "The network is responding. I'm uploading everything. Our situation, our location, detailed scans of the Kethvar forces." "Who are you sending it to?" Alina asked. Chen looked up from his instruments, his face pale in the alien light. "I don't know. Whoever built this network, or whoever inherited it. All I can do is broadcast our need and hope someone out there is listening." The spire's hum grew louder, building to a crescendo that made their teeth ache. Then, suddenly, silence. The blue light faded to its previous dim glow, and the chamber returned to its ancient stillness. "Is that it?" Rodriguez asked. Chen checked his instruments. "The message has been sent. If anyone received it, and if they choose to respond, we should know soon." They made their way back to the command center through corridors that seemed even more damaged than before. The Kethvar were pressing their attack, and Alina could hear the distinctive whine of their bioweapons getting closer to the station's core sections. In the command center, the situation had deteriorated further. Blake's replacement at the tactical station looked up with desperate eyes. "Commander, they've breached the outer hull in 6 more locations. Defensive turrets 3 and 7 are offline. At current rate of deterioration, we have maybe 6 hours before they reach the civilian shelters." Elena nodded grimly. 6 hours to live. She'd had worse odds before, but not by much. Then Lieutenant Blake's console chirped with an incoming signal. She looked up, confusion clear on her face. "Commander, I'm reading something on long-range sensors. It's faint, but there's definitely something out there." Elena moved to the sensor station, studying the ghostly blip on the display. Whatever it was still at the edge of the system, barely visible even to their most sensitive instruments. "Configuration doesn't match any known ship class," Blake reported. It's moving fast. Really fast. If these readings are correct, it'll be here in less than an hour." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing life support. Had Chen's message reached someone, or had they just called down something worse than the Kefar? Rodriguez was studying the tactical display with the eye of someone who'd seen his share of space combat. Whatever it is, it's not broadcasting any identification signals. Could be another Kefar ship, or something else entirely. Or, Elena said quietly, it could be help. The next 40 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. The Kefar continued their relentless assault, grinding away at the station's defenses, while Elena's people fought back with everything they had. Mining charges became grenades, ore processors became weapons. Every corridor became a potential battlefield. But Elena found herself watching the sensor display, watching that mysterious blip grow larger as it approached. Whatever it was unlike anything in the ship recognition database. Sleek, fast, and built with technology that seemed to bend the rules of physics. When it finally arrived at the edge of the battle zone, Elena understood why Blake had been confused by the sensor readings. The ship that dropped out of hyperspace was like nothing she'd ever seen. It was human in design, but enhanced beyond recognition. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving it an almost ghostly appearance against the star field. And then it opened fire. The weapons that lanced out from the Phantom ship weren't plasma or particle beams or any conventional energy weapon. They were something else entirely, beams of coherent force that seemed to warp space itself around their targets. When they struck the Kefar ships, the results were devastating. Alien vessels that had shrugged off the station's defensive fire simply ceased to exist, unraveled at the molecular level. Elena watched in awe as the mysterious ship carved through the enemy fleet like a scythe through wheat. In minutes, what had been an overwhelming invasion force was reduced to scattered debris and fleeing survivors. Then her communication console crackled to life with a voice she hadn't heard in over 3 years. "Proxima Station, this is Captain Maria Santos aboard the Ghost Protocol. Sorry we're late to the party. Mind if we dock?" Part 2. The Phantom Arrives. Elena stared at the communication console as if it had just started speaking in ancient tongues. The voice belonged to Captain Maria Santos, a woman who had officially died 3 years ago during a classified mission in the Outer Rim. Elena had attended her memorial service. "Maria?" Elena's voice cracked with disbelief. "Is that really you?" The response came with a warmth that cut through the battle-scarred command center like sunlight. "Hello, Elena. I know this is confusing, but we'll explain everything once we dock. We have medical teams standing by and emergency supplies for your people." Lieutenant Blake looked between the commander and the communication console, clearly lost. "Ma'am, do you know this person?" Elena nodded slowly, her mind racing to process what she was seeing and hearing. "Captain Santos was my executive officer during the Titan campaign. She was supposedly killed during Operation Deep Strike." On the main display, the Phantom ship moved with impossible grace, its dark hull seeming to bend light around it as it approached the station. The few remaining Kefar vessels flowed into hyperspace, apparently having no desire to face whatever technology had just decimated their fleet. "Proxima Station, requesting permission to dock at Port 7. Came Santos' voice again. "We have wounded to evacuate and repairs to make." Elena found her command voice again. "Permission granted. But Maria, we need to talk. There are questions that need answers." "Understood. I'll meet you in the docking bay personally." As the Ghost protocol aligned itself with the station's docking port, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the ship's design. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull wasn't just dark. It seemed to actively absorb electromagnetic radiation, making it nearly invisible to most sensors. The few visible weapon ports were seamlessly integrated into the hull, and the entire vessel had an organic quality that reminded her uncomfortably of HFY technology. Chief Rodriguez whistleblow. "Never seen anything like her. Those aren't standard human drives, and that hull material isn't in any textbook I've read." Dr. Chen was practically vibrating with excitement. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's powering that ship, it's using principles we barely understand." Elena turned to Blake. "Lieutenant, coordinate with their medical teams. Get our wounded to their sickbay and make sure the civilian areas are secure. I want a full damage assessment within the hour." "Yes, Mom." Elena made her way through the damaged corridors toward Docking Bay 7, her mind churning with questions and possibilities. If Maria was alive, if humanity had access to technology like what she'd just witnessed, then everything Elena thought she knew about the war effort was wrong. The docking bay was a scene of controlled chaos. The Ghost Protocol's crew was efficiently unloading medical supplies and emergency rations, while their medics tended to wounded station personnel. They moved with military precision, but their equipment was unlike anything Elena had seen in standard colonial marine units. Captain Maria Santos stepped through the airlock, and Elena felt another shock of recognition mixed with confusion. Maria looked exactly as she had 3 years ago, not a day older, her dark hair still regulation length, her brown eyes still sharp with intelligence. She wore a uniform that resembled colonial marine dress, but with subtle differences in cut and material. "Elena," Maria said, embracing her old friend, "it's good to see you alive." "The same could be said about you," Elena replied, studying Maria's face for any sign of deception or change. "Last I heard, you were killed in action during a deep space reconnaissance mission." Maria's expression grew serious. "That's what everyone was supposed to think. The truth is more complicated. Walk with me." They made their way to a quiet section of the docking bay while Maria's crew continued their relief operations. Elena noticed that the Ghost Protocol's personnel moved with an efficiency that spoke of extensive training and experience, but their gear was definitely not standard issue. 3 years ago, Maria began, I was recruited for a special project. Black Book, need to know only. The brass had become concerned about humanity's position in the galaxy. We were expanding fast, but we were also making enemies. The Kethvar weren't the first hostile species we'd encountered, and intelligence suggested they wouldn't be the last. Elena nodded. She'd seen the classified reports during her Marine service. For every friendly first contact, there were 2 or 3 encounters with species that viewed humanity as a threat to be eliminated. So they created Project Ghost Protocol, Maria continued, a deep black program designed to develop advanced defensive technologies and create rapid response units that could operate beyond normal command structures. We've been working with recovered alien technology, studying their methods, adapting their innovations to human needs. Elena looked out at the Ghost Protocol through the docking bay's observation window. And this ship is the result. One of them. We have a small fleet now, maybe a dozen ships with crews trained specifically for this kind of operation. We monitor deep space communications, respond to distress calls, and study alien technology wherever we find it. Like the beacon Dr. Chen activated. Maria smiled. That ancient communication network has been invaluable. We've been monitoring it for 2 years, waiting for someone to figure out how to use it. When your message came through, we were already in the sector tracking Kethvar fleet movements. Elena felt a chill of realization. You knew they were coming. We suspected. The Kethvar have been probing human space for months, testing our defenses, gathering intelligence. Proxima Station was an obvious target, isolated and lightly defended. What we didn't know was that someone had deliberately sabotaged your communications and fed your location to the enemy. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Someone set us up. Maria nodded grimly. Corporate espionage. We've been tracking unusual communications between certain elements of Proxima Mining Consortium and known Kethvar intermediaries. Someone in your parent company wanted this station to fail. Elena's jaw clenched. She'd suspected corporate politics were involved when their supply shipments had been delayed and their communication equipment had suffered mysterious failures, but this was beyond simple cost-cutting measures. They sacrificed 200 lives for what? Mining rights? Stock prices? Worse than that, Maria said. We believe they were trying to provoke a larger conflict. Some of the megacorporations have been positioning themselves to profit from a full-scale war with the Kethvar. Weapons contracts, reconstruction deals, territorial acquisitions. A successful defense of Proxima Station would have complicated their timeline. Elena stared out at the debris field that had been the Kethvar fleet. What happens now? Now we gather evidence, expose the conspiracy, and make sure the people responsible face justice. But first, we need to get your people to safety and make sure the station is secure. Over the next several hours, Elena watched as Maria's crew worked with quiet efficiency to repair the station's most critical systems. Their technology was impressive, but what struck her most was how seamlessly they integrated with her own people. These weren't the cold, distant operatives she might have expected from a black project. They were professionals who genuinely cared about saving lives. Dr. Chen spent most of his time aboard the Ghost Protocol, studying their technological innovations with the enthusiasm of a child in a candy store. When he finally returned, his eyes were bright with excitement. Commander, what they've accomplished is remarkable. They've managed to integrate alien technologies from dozens of different species into a coherent system. The ship's hull uses adaptive metamaterials that can reconfigure themselves for stealth or defense. The weapons are based on gravitational manipulation principles that we're only beginning to understand. Elena found herself on the Ghost Protocol's bridge later that evening, studying the ship's systems with professional curiosity. The design was unmistakably human in its approach to problem-solving, but enhanced by technologies that seemed almost magical. How many people know about this program? She asked Maria. Not many. The president, a few key members of Congress, maybe 50 people in the military and intelligence communities. We've had to stay small to maintain security. And you've been fighting this shadow war for 3 years. Maria nodded. Preventing incidents, gathering intelligence, protecting human colonies from threats they never knew existed. The Kethvar attack on Proxima Station was just the most visible example. Elena studied the tactical displays showing the positions of other Ghost Protocol ships throughout human space. What do you need from us? Evidence, witnesses, proof that Proxima Mining Consortium conspired with hostile aliens to destroy this station, and we need people we can trust to help expand the program. Elena understood immediately. You're recruiting. The galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than most people realize. Humanity needs protectors who can operate in the shadows, who can make the hard choices that official policy can't support. Your people proved today that they have what it takes. Elena looked around the bridge at Maria's crew. They came from different backgrounds, different services, but they shared a common dedication to protecting humanity from threats that most people couldn't even imagine. What about the survivors? The people who've seen what happened here? They'll be relocated if they choose, given new identities and opportunities within the program's support network. Or they can return to civilian life with certain memories carefully edited. Their choice. Elena considered the offer. After 20 years of military service, she'd thought her fighting days were behind her. But today had reminded her why she'd become a soldier in the first place. There were threats out there that required someone to stand watch, someone willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect the innocent. When do we start? Maria smiled. As soon as we finish gathering evidence against the people who tried to kill you. The investigation took another week. Ghost Protocol intelligence teams worked with Alina's surviving personnel to piece together the conspiracy that had led to the attack. The evidence was damning. Corporate communications showed clear coordination with HFY agents, including detailed intelligence about the station's defenses and personnel schedules. When the story broke in the human media, it sent shockwaves through the corporate community. Proxima Mining Consortium's stock price collapsed overnight, and several high-ranking executives were arrested on charges of treason and conspiracy to commit genocide. But for Alina and her people, the real story was just beginning. Most of the survivors chose to join the Ghost Protocol program in various capacities. Some became crew members on the Shadow Fleet. Others joined support operations on hidden bases throughout human space. A few chose to return to civilian life, their memories carefully edited to remove classified details. Alina found herself aboard the Ghost Protocol as it departed the Proxima system, now serving as Maria's executive officer once again. The ship slipped into hyperspace with barely a ripple, its advanced drive systems making the transition as smooth as breathing. Any regrets? Maria asked as they watched the stars shift around them. Alina looked out at the infinite expanse of space, knowing that somewhere out there, other human colonies were facing threats they couldn't see or understand. But now, there were people watching, people ready to emerge from the shadows when hope seemed lost. No regrets, she said. Just a job to do. The Ghost Protocol disappeared into the void, one of humanity's guardian angels returning to its eternal watch. Behind them, Proxima Station continued its operations under new management, its people never knowing how close they'd come to extinction, or how a phantom from the darkness had saved them all. In the depths of space, other ships waited and watched, ready to answer the call when hope faded and humanity needed its protectors most. They were the Ghost Fleet, the Shadow Guardians, the phantoms who emerged from darkness to ensure that humanity's light would never be extinguished. And in a galaxy full of threats and wonders, that made all the difference.